What's going on, good people? Today you'll hear an audio version of the notes. Sorry I couldn't be in class today, but I will be here tomorrow to answer any questions that you have. I've also put the file of the notes on Haiku if quite frankly, some of you probably don't feel like hearing my voice and you'd rather just read the notes on your own. That's quite all right. Otherwise, you can listen to my voice and you can press pause when you feel like writing. All right, so we're talking about JFK, John F. Kennedy, for those of you who don't know. Cold War tensions of the 60s, and he's going to become president. If you were listening when we were talking about the Cold War with Eisenhower, it had become really, really tense, mainly because of this U-2 incident. All right. Now, JFK is going to become president. All right. Because a big thing now is television. All right. More people have televisions in the home. They're going to actually, it's going to be the first televised national presidential debate. And what people realize about Kennedy is, man, this guy's handsome. He's charismatic. He's from Boston. We love his accent. So Kennedy stuck out in a lot of people's minds. Not to mention that his family was, very well off. They were rich, so he had a lot of money for advertisements. Kennedy's also going to gain the African American vote. Martin Luther King is actually going to end up in jail on some crazy. He basically was treated unfairly, and he was the only one left in jail. And Kennedy actually gives a personal call to Coretta Scott King, Martin Luther's wife, and says, you have my full support. We're going to do everything we can. And his brother Robert actually basically gets Martin Luther King out of jail. And of course, that's going to spread like a wildfire across the nation. That Kennedy helped one of the most important civil rights leaders of that time, probably. And he's going to get the black vote. So, as far as the Cold War is concerned, he's going to have a new approach. Eisenhower and Dulles, we talked about how they said, if you attack us, we're going to attack you. It's simple as that. Well, Kennedy says, well, not quite. We're going to have something called a flexible response policy, and you probably want to write that down. This is going to allow for several options in dealing with nuclear threats, such as diplomacy, actually sending in troops. Because we could possibly send in troops if it wasn't something serious, he's going to expand spending for ships, troops. He's going to even create a branch known as the Special Forces, whose primary function would be to go in, wreak some havoc in a country, and get out if needed. Was first Cold War test is going to come with Cuba. At the time, Cuba was led by a young rebel who had took control, and he had support from the Soviet Union. A lot of Americans were outraged that America let Cuba get taken over by communists at this time. But you got to think about it. America looked really, really bad to the world at this point in time. So Fidel Castro is going to be the name of this young rebel. He's a proud communist, and he was considered by many a very, very harsh dictator. Well, about 10% of the Cuban population fled to America during this time because they wanted to escape. It says to accept, but it means to escape the harsh laws of Castro. Well, when Eisenhower was president, he creates his plan. And he says, you know what? Let's train these exiles. Let's turn them into basically, soldiers and send them back to Cuba. Let's let them stir up a revolution, and that will help us, take down Castro. They can serve as uh, a distraction, if you will. So Kennedy hears about this plan literally 9 days after he takes office. And they say, what do you want to do? We've been working on this plan for a while. We think it could work. So Kennedy goes ahead and approves it. Well, everything in the plan backfired. All these different things backfired. And Cuba basically was able to imprison or kill every single exile that went into Cuba and attacked. And this looks very, very bad in America. I mean, if you can imagine little old Cuba, and Castro is very, very happy. He's hyping it up. Little old Cuba beat the big bad Americans. The big bad Americans couldn't take us down. So, Kennedy gets, he's very embarrassed. It's his first probably military act as president. It's called the Bay of Pigs. All right. And you want to write that down. What I just described to you is called the Bay of Pigs because it took place at the Bay of Pigs. And a lot of people say Kennedy didn't send enough air support so that he wasn't as harsh military-wise as he should have been. Well, he's going to get to redeem himself when the Cuban Missile Crisis takes place. All right, Castro's being protected by the Soviet Union, as we talked about. He started to receive plenty of nuclear missiles. You got to think about it. This is pretty scary for the United States if you think about the location of Cuba as far as the United States. So it's not that far away. Kennedy says he's not going to tolerate missiles that close to the United States. And he says, you know, what happens is we're going to prove that there's missiles in Cuba. And he does that. Um, he also creates a blockade. He creates a blockade around Cuba to stop ships from the Soviet Union to carry nuclear weapons. Now, again, this was a scary time period because as these Russian ships literally are approaching, we're wondering what's going to pop off. You know, are they going to shoot something at us? Are they going to keep coming towards us, and we're going to have to basically declare war, or are they going to turn around? And you know, the military wants to get their face back because they were embarrassed at the Bay of Pigs. So they're telling Kennedy at this time they want Kennedy to really go into Cuba, take over Cuba, go in the Soviet Union if they have to, blow up the ships if they have to, but they don't. Kennedy doesn't believe in that. Again, he's using his flexible response policy. So the Soviet Union also lies to the United Nations about these missiles. They say, we don't have any missiles in Cuba. We don't know what you're talking about. So instead of playing that game with the Soviet Union, Kennedy realizes this is an opportunity to make the Soviet Union look like liars to the world, like they made us look like liars to the world. And he does that. He sends in planes to gather photos, close photos, and he embarrasses the Soviet Union on a national scale at the United Nations. Another issue was the Berlin crisis. All right, we talked a little bit about the Berlin Wall a few days ago, but the Berlin Wall was built during Kennedy's administration. All right, Kennedy and Khrushchev were each determined to contain. Remember, we talked about containment. They were each determined to contain the other's ideology and create different containment policies to turn different countries to their ideologies. Well, after the Berlin airlift took place, many East Germans are going to flee to West Berlin because they're like, we don't want to be communists. And that's going to lead to the construction of the Berlin Wall. Literally, what happens, Khrushchev gets upset because all of these 20% of his population from Germany went to West Berlin to live, and it hurts his economy. It makes him look bad. And America realizes that, you know, wow, these people are being oppressed. They do not want to be communists. Well, what Khrushchev does literally overnight, all right, well, it takes about 2 days. He constructs the Berlin Wall. It takes about 2 days, and people could not escape that wall. And you'll see why if you decide to take a look on the blend space. This wall is going to become a symbol of oppression. It's going to anger the United States citizens as it shows just how much communism is being forced on people all around the globe. Um, what's going to end up happening because of this result of tension and because of the Berlin crisis, we're going to have this thing called a hotline created. You might want to write that down. And you know the little red telephone? Well, that's the phone line between the two countries that's going to enable both of those leaders of the countries to speak at once should any crisis or emergency arise. Um, so if that phone rang, it was kind of scary because it was a problem. Because it could have been the president saying, look, this is unacceptable. We're about to let off a nuke. Then you had the limited test ban treaty, which is technically still in place today. Some people have apparently um, not abided by it, and of course, North Korea doesn't abide by it at all. But it's supposed to be no more nuclear testing in the atmosphere. You're not supposed to do it in water, and when you do it on land, it's supposed to be underground. If that makes sense, and I'll probably have to explain that tomorrow if you have questions about the limited test ban treaty. But you want to write that down as well and what it means. All right, Kennedy's promise. JFK informed the world that we stand today on the edge of a new frontier. He said we have to be new pioneers. We have to explore uncharted areas of science and space. We've got to become better. And you got to think about it. He has a point because we kind of look bad right now. And a lot of Americans thought that the Soviet Union was better than us because they had launched the first unmanned satellite in space, and we had this whole space race thing. Who could send which satellite up first? Who could send a man on the moon first? And we eventually win that race of sending a man on the moon. We put Neil Armstrong on the moon. So you start seeing a big emphasis on science and technology, not only in schools, but in careers as well. Um, what Kennedy does to address a lot of problems at home, he has a lot of issues. One is his economy. He has to stimulate the economy. He takes some advice, I guess, or pages out of Roosevelt's books, and he realizes he has to increase government spending, but he also has to give more confidence to these spenders, to the citizens. So what he does is he raises minimum wage by about $1.25. He provides monetary assistance. That means he provides money to cities with high employment rates, and he cuts taxes by over $1 billion, I believe. I believe it's $1 billion. It could be $1 million, so don't quote me on that. He addressed poverty aboard by creating the Peace Corps. You want to write the Peace Corps down. It's a program of a volunteer assistance. We volunteers go to developing nations like Asia, Latin America, and Africa. We still have it today. He creates the Alliance for Progress. It offers economic and technical assistance to some of these Latin American countries. We still have that today. Kennedy also presents a civil rights bill to Congress, and he's determined to deal with the Jim Crow injustices of the South. Of course, that's going to cause some issues to several people, and he's going to start losing a lot of supporters because of his advocacy of the civil rights bill of the civil rights. On November 22nd, 1963, JFK is going to be shot and killed right beside his wife. He's literally riding beside his wife on a parade in Texas in an open roof limo. And that's why you'll probably never see any president riding in an open roof limo again. And it's kind of weird because they didn't think they were going to get a warm welcoming from Texas anyway because of his philosophies on civil rights, with it being deep South. And then his wife in the parade, everybody's cheering. So many people came out. His wife looked at him a little before he was shot and killed and said, well, it looks like you can't say anything bad about Texas. They really came out to support you. Lee Harvey Oswald was charged with the murder as they found his palm print on the rifle. And Oswald was an ex-Marine. So, of course, a lot of people tend to think that this happened because of civil rights and his views on civil rights. But actually, the government believes that it happened because Oswald was a communist activist. He lived in the Soviet Union. He supported Castro after a dishonorable discharge, and people thought that he could have possibly been a spy for the Soviet Union. While Oswald was being transferred between jails, he was actually shot and killed by a man named Jack Ruby. Now, all of this is actually a conspiracy. It's still unanswered. I mean, we know Oswald killed him, but a lot of people have questions as far as why. There's still a lot of questions. A lot of people think that maybe Oswald wasn't the only one to shoot, that it was other shots fired. I have no idea. The Warren Commission, you want to write that down. It was created to investigate. Lyndon B. Johnson, Kennedy's vice president, going to create the Warren Commission to investigate the possible conspiracies of the assassination attempt. And you have Lyndon B. Johnson. You don't have to write him down because you're going to talk a lot about him on Friday. He's the vice president. He takes Kennedy's place, and he's going to stamp his own mark in history. And again, we'll talk a little bit about him later. All right, so you're done with notes. You can look at a little bit of these videos on the blend space. If you click on the back of them or go look on the comments, then I'm going to make sure I write some things about the videos that you can look up. You don't have to answer any questions or anything. You don't even have to look at these videos if you don't want to. So take today to really, really get caught up on some stuff that some of y'all have to get caught up on. Some of y'all have zeros for this reading study guides. Make sure you get those reading study guides done, especially the chapter 27 that's due. All right. See y'all Friday.